guys, Chef Fathers here, founder of Indulge Right Foods. Welcome to another episode of Indulge Right in the Kitchen. Listen, as someone with food allergies, especially gluten allergies, you and I both know that walking into any store or any bakery and just grabbing a Profiterole or an Eclair or most baked goods for that matter is really not as easy as it used to be when we weren't gluten-free. So today we'll make some profiterole pâte choux, at least the base of it, right? And then I'll show you how to make them, how to stuff them, how to glaze them and all that stuff. But in this episode we're going to focus on the pâte choux by itself. You could make this, freeze it, once you pipe it, once you bake it, or you could pipe it and then freeze it as well and take it out and bake it when you want it. There's multiple ways of doing it, but let's get this thing started. It is very simple. I will share the recipe with you below with a link. All it takes is water, butter, flour, and eggs. That's it, and a dash of salt. In today's recipe, I'll be using our cake flour blend. I think this will work best for it as it has a bit more of elasticity. And then that's it. Again, once it's very simple, I'll share the recipes. We're going to start by just melting the butter with the water, bring it to a quick boil. Then we'll add the flour to it, cook it a bit more, and then we'll add some eggs to it off the fire in the mixer until it absorbs the whole thing, and then we'll pipe it. Okay, so we're off to the stove. All right, now that my butter and water mixture came to a kind of simmering boil, I've got the butter melted. I'm going to add the flour to it. I'm going to start with a whisk so I could break down all the lumps, and then we'll switch to a spoon or a spatula and then put it back on the fire for like 2 to 3 minutes. Just want to make sure I'll break all the lumps in there. See, it starts to come together. And one lump, kind of like a thick roux. Now we'll switch. I'm back on the fire. Okay, now that we've cooked this for about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, I'm going to transfer into a mixing bowl and then cool it off for a minute or so before we start adding the eggs to it. So I'm just going to let it cool off by mixing it with a paddle attachment. And then we'll start adding the eggs. Once again, nothing gets wasted in the kitchen. Get all this gooey stuff in here. Now, what you want to achieve is basically a nice and kind of a lump-free paste, okay? That's the whole point of it. And also, the reason why we cook it is we want to evaporate as much of the water as possible so that we could incorporate the eggs, which will make it nice and kind of a fluffy and empty so that you could fill it up and stuff it with whatever filling you end up with. So I'm just going to let that go now, and then we'll start adding the eggs. Okay, so I've been cooling this off a bit in here for about 4 minutes or so. And when you touch it, it's not as hot as it was when I first pulled it off the stove. Obviously, that's very important because once you add the eggs to it, you don't want to scramble the eggs. That's going to go into the garbage otherwise. So, very important step. Don't skip it. Give it a couple minutes. Let it cool off. You don't want to get too cold, but nonetheless, you don't want it too hot. So, I'm going to add a couple eggs at a time and take it up a notch so that it does not scramble. Before I add the next batch of eggs, I'm going to let it absorb as much of it as possible and then add some more. You could add one at a time, a couple at a time, you'll be fine either way. Once again, I'll share the recipes with a link below and let you know where to get it. Okay, now that we've incorporated all the eggs, again, you want it kind of runny, but not really super runny. You want to incorporate as many eggs as possible without making it lose its shape after you pipe it. Okay, so now we're on to piping. It doesn't matter if you use a star tip or a flat tip. It's just a matter of preference, really. And that's basically just start piping. And the shape, or it's totally up to you whether you do Eclairs or Profiteroles. Obviously, the difference is in the shape. So we're just going to pipe it steadily. Alright, so now that I have all of them piped, it looks like I've also incorporated perhaps 1 or 2 eggs extra in here. It's a bit looser than I would want it to be. You want it to hold the shape as you pipe it, and this is a bit more runnier, so there could have been 2 problems in here. One, that I did not cook it long enough, didn't allow enough water to evaporate. 2, add a couple extra eggs to it. Regardless, your recipe will be adjusted accordingly. Okay, but you want to keep shape the way you pipe it. And now this goes into the oven. We'll cook it for about 10 minutes at higher temperature, and then we'll drop the temperature and cook it for another 10-15 minutes, just so it's nice and fluffy, brown, and empty inside and hold its shape. Okay, so ultimately what you want is the outside shell was kind of empty inside, so to speak, so you could fill it up with whatever filling you want. Okay, so we've baked them. In fact, here's the deal. Remember how I said I had added a little extra eggs? So this is the result of that. You'll end up with a bit flatter. This was not planned, so I ended up making the second batch while we're waiting for this first batch to bake. And everything is fine, except they're a bit flatter, so there goes a bit of diagnostic for you, just in case you run into trouble. And this is how it should look like. Nice and fluffy. Looks like it's almost a small little cabbage, right? Hence the name, Pâte. And inside should be nice and empty, so you could fill it up with however you want, which we'll do on the next video. Once again, I've added a bit too much eggs in here. As you could tell, they went flat, right? Flavor is still the same, but nonetheless, they were a bit flatter. That's all there is to it, really. So cut back on the eggs on the next batch, and we're good to go. So here we are, Pâte, and then next video we'll fill it up with, I don't know, we'll see what happens. All right, I will share a recipe with you on the link below in here. So I will talk to you next time. Enjoy.